Here's the story of Kirito. Well, actually his name is Sueharu, a first-year high school student. One day, he bumps into his idol, Shirokusa Kachi, a young writer who recently became famous. Sueharu is blown away by her novel and seizes this miraculous chance to tell her so, making Shirokusa tear up with joy and causing Sueharu to fall head over heels for her. But his love remains unspoken, so he continues his school life with his friend Tetsuhiko, a charming playboy with 7 girlfriends from different schools, because the girls at their school think he's trash and avoid him. Tetsuhiko seems to be getting serious about one girl but hasn't decided who yet. He teases Sueharu, saying he'll go after Shirokusa, will call her Kachi from now on, because he knows Sueharu likes her and, coincidentally, she's in their class. Despite being famous, Kachi keeps her distance from everyone. Some students have a magazine with her latest photo shoot, and she glares at them, finding their whispers annoying. Tetsu warns Sueharu to stay away from her since she's excellent at sports, studies, has a bright future as a writer, and is practically a model. Meanwhile, Sueharu's claim to fame is his good health and unshakable optimism. He believes he gets along well with Kachi because they've talked a few times, live nearby, and have run into each other occasionally, but he's getting way ahead of himself. Sueharu thinks Kachi is smart and kind, but when a girl asks to copy her notes, Kachi rips her notebook instead of refusing, leaving herself with no notes and in tears. Sueharu's school life also involves his childhood friend Kuroha, who's super popular and even has a fan club that plans to bury Sueharu in a mountain cave out of jealousy. Kuroha always ends up taking care of him one way or another. The big reveal here is that Sueharu once rejected Kuroha. She mentions this in front of the whole class, hoping he changes his mind, but Sueharu can't date her, even though he knows it would be fun. Kuroha then jokes that it was all a prank, though it's hard to tell if she's serious. Enter the plot twist. Kachi's friend blurts out that a famous actor named Mitsuru, who also attends their school, confessed to her. This is a devastating blow for Sueharu, who leaves early, using it as an excuse to mope by the river. Kuroha, knowing him well, finds him there and tries to cheer him up. Sueharu knows the confession was serious and feels terrible for forcing Kuroha to say it was a joke to save face. Kuroha likes him for his kind and considerate nature, so she's determined to help him get revenge on Kachi, who she thinks was cruel to lead him on and then ditch him for a celebrity. Sueharu and Kuroha plot to expose Mitsuru's dark secrets and ruin his reputation, hoping Kachi will look bad too. The problem is, they don't know if Mitsuru has any dark secrets. Kuroha points out this wouldn't make Sueharu the winner, just not a loser. So, the plan is for Kachi to confess to him so he can reject her. Kuroha's brilliant idea is to pretend she and Sueharu are dating, an excellent plan for her because she can make her rival suffer and get closer to the guy she likes, even if it's fake. Maybe she can make him fall for her in the process. This last part doesn't seem too hard, as Sueharu admits he's happy pretending to date her because he does have feelings for her, though his affection for Kachi was stronger since she was his first love. Kuroha doesn't give up. She becomes more aggressive, suggesting they kiss to seal the deal. But Sueharu, following the teachings of the Church of Kirito, tempt the waifus then pull back, bolts from the scene, leaving Kuroha hanging. He starts digging for dirt on Mitsuru but only finds good things. Despite this, he swears to the god of jealousy to expose Mitsuru. Coincidentally, Mitsuru overhears this rant because he was looking for Sueharu. Turns out, Sueharu was a child actor with a promising career, pressured by his family's legacy. His dad was a stuntman, and his mom a not-so-popular actress. Mitsuru reveals he became an actor because of Sueharu, whose dad worked with him on a show. Mitsuru's dad always spoke highly of Sueharu, making Mitsuru jealous and determined to surpass him. When Kachi mentioned Sueharu was at their school, Mitsuru got curious and decided to date Kachi to prove he was better and make Sueharu suffer. They aren't officially dating yet, but Mitsuru plans to publicly confess during the Confession Festival to gain his agency's approval. The Confession Festival is exactly what it sounds like, with the usual festival activities like plays. This is important for Sueharu's plan. He tells Tetsu he'll join his play but needs an amazing script to beat Mitsuru. Who could write such a script? Obviously, Kachi. They have to convince her, which seems tough because Kuroha announces they're dating and is upset Sueharu didn't walk her to school. Forget revenge, Kachi agrees to be the scriptwriter, smiling and asking for Sueharu's number as payment. Sueharu melts into a lovesick puppy even while cooking, which looks silly considering the beauty, Kuroha, living with him. Kuroha mentions her sisters miss his cooking. She has 3 beautiful sisters who consider Sueharu a brother. They're collectively called the 4 beautiful and colorful Shida sisters, Shida being their last name, and their names representing colors: Kuroha, black; Midori, green; Aoi, blue; and aka red. Kuroha often helps clean Sueharu's messy house, just like her constantly traveling father. If you're wondering about his mother, she's sadly deceased, but they're not supposed to know that. So, act surprised when the big reveal happens. While cleaning, Kuroha finds a photo of the protagonist with a friend from his acting days. According to him, it's the son of a show director he worked with, named Shiro, who wanted to be a screenwriter and have the protagonist star in one of his works someday. What a coincidence that Shiro's name, profession, and appearance are so similar to Shirokusa. Just then, she calls the protagonist to talk about the festival. Naturally, he has to pretend it's someone else so Kuroha doesn't get mad, but Kachi, Shirokusa, gets annoyed hearing that his childhood friend is at his house. She's only pretending to be mad to tease him, knowing full well the nature of their relationship. Despite this, Kachi decides it's better to discuss the matter in person, so she'll book a library room for a private chat. This phrase sends Sueharu's mind into chaos, immediately imagining her having secret dates with Mitsuru in the library, plunging him back into depression. Kuroha, noticing his mood, starts to doubt Kachi's intentions, thinking she's teaming up with the blonde to mess with Sueharu's life. Asking for help from someone you want revenge on is pretty dumb, right? Sueharu made a big mistake. There's also the acting issue. Mitsuru is a professional, and Sueharu hasn't been on camera in years, so he's probably rusty. But Kuroha reassures him with her usual line that he likes, making him blush. He counters by showing her face in a mirror to make her embarrassed too. According to Kuroha's selfish logic, she can tease him, but he can't tease her. Sueharu pretends he's going to kiss her to prove he can do what he wants, but she's ready for that and much more, waiting for him to make the first move, which isn't possible because it's public time. The writer interrupts with another message about the play. Sueharu and Tetsu are practicing when we learn why Kuroha worries about him returning to acting. He has panic attacks when reciting lines, causing him to faint. He wakes up in the infirmary, where Kachi shows him her script, but not completely, wanting a payment. She was a fan and knew he was an actor when they met, so she wants to know why he quit. Enter the tragic backstory. A show catapulted Sueharu to stardom, and in the 2nd season, his mom played his character's mother. In one scene, she was supposed to get hit by a car. During filming, she got so into the role that her brain said, "Bye, see you later," and she passed away from overacting. Sueharu convinced the cast to continue the show to honor his mom's dream, resulting in excellent ratings, but he quit acting and kept his mom's death a secret. Kachi cries after hearing this story and leaves, feeling guilty for a grave mistake. She was Shiro, and her dad was the show's producer. He had promised to have Sueharu star in one of his works but didn't tell his daughter why they separated. Kachi felt betrayed, as Sueharu was her first love. She decided to become beautiful, successful, and unbeatable to make him regret leaving her. With the revelation, her hatred vanished, and she couldn't stay angry. Kachi's plan for the play is an obvious trap to embarrass Mitsuru and end with Sueharu stealing her heart. First, it's suspicious that Kachi knows Mitsuru's moves, and second, we know she wanted to ridicule him. Sueharu decides to go ahead with the play for fun but asks Kuroha not to attend rehearsals to avoid her worrying. She waits, knowing he'll perform once he finds the right inspiration. Festival day arrives, and Sueharu and Tetsu encounter the blonde for a brief exchange before heading to their class's restaurant. Kuroha wears modernized traditional Japanese clothes, and a mysterious figure arrives, which we recognize by the outfit. Sueharu needs to read a few subtitles to get it. Alone, the protagonist realizes it's Shiro, who apologizes for not visiting and breaking the promise to act in his play. Kachi is happy he remembers her and the promise, revealing she worked hard to see him again, even if she initially hated him. Seeing him with Kuroha rekindled her jealousy, but with everything clear, there's no reason to hide anymore. She wants them to be closer, asking to be called Shiro-chan again, reminiscing about old times. Kuroha overhears, confronting her with threatening glares. She's most annoyed by the nickname Shiro, meaning white, while Kuro means black, suggesting she's the bad guy. At least she's dating the protagonist, giving her an advantage. They spend the festival exploring various class booths, but Kuroha knows their story won't end happily. Before the play begins, Kuroha slaps Sueharu, symbolizing their breakup since there's no need to pretend anymore, as he'll confess to Shiro. This makes Sueharu sad, so he mentally prepares. While we learn the festival's tradition, people declare their love on stage. Mitsuru uses this to put on a show, singing and dancing to the opening of Sueharu's last series to humiliate him further. Sueharu enters the stage to join the spectacle. So, let's ignore those wacky dance moves they call dancing because, obviously, our protagonist is the best at this, and the blonde gracefully accepts his defeat. It's time for Sueharu's big plan, but he has a slight change of heart. He starts by telling Shiro that he initially liked her, then felt betrayed and sought revenge. During this process, he realized who the most important person to him really was, Kuroha. She's always been there for him, supporting him in everything, and he wants to apologize for not reciprocating her feelings until now. This is the moment everyone was waiting for, but with a beautiful smile, Kuroha says what no one expected, "Nope." The crowd is stunned, trying not to laugh. But wait, there's more. Tetsu talks to the blonde, revealing that Mitsuru played the villain on purpose, and Tetsu figured it out. Turns out, Mitsuru and Shiro are practically siblings. He always knew she loved Sueharu and wanted revenge, especially after Kuroha clarified her feelings, which filled Shiro with jealousy, leading her to pretend to date Mitsuru. Mitsuru did it partly to push Sueharu back into acting because he's a huge fan. This means Mitsuru earned Sueharu's hatred, leaving Kuroha as the only winner, or so Tetsu thought. Mitsuru shows him the truth. Shiro is very regretful for rejecting Mitsuru out of impulse because he rejected her first, leading to this whole mess. Shiro is traumatized because she wasn't chosen, Sueharu is embarrassed from the public rejection, and Kuroha is sad for rejecting the person she loves for a silly reason. In short, the author just wanted to stretch the story, or it would have ended in 3 chapters. Sueharu has nightmares about the embarrassing festival moment, while Kuroha and Shiro lament losing their chances. They refuse to accept it was their own stupidity and blame each other instead. Sueharu deals with the shame in class, and like any good friend, Tetsu uploaded the video of his performance to YouTube. It went viral since he's a former actor, putting the trio in the national spotlight. Tetsu keeps the ad revenue as payment for helping Sueharu. This attracts reporters and more important people like Momosaka Maria, Momo to her friends, who barges into class and hugs the protagonist, saying that phrase that drives otakus wild. Momo worked at the same agency as Sueharu and he guided her with his experience. After he suddenly quit, she lost touch but found him again thanks to the video. He was her first love, making the other 2 girls jealous. For now, let's put this aside and focus on a chat between Sueharu and Tetsu. Sueharu forgives him over a pizza, knowing Tetsu did it for publicity to launch his acting comeback. Tetsu introduces Rina, a girl who does various odd jobs for pay, excluding the unmentionable. She knows Tetsu from high school and occasionally worked for him. She gets along with Sueharu, finding him amusing, despite always staring where she shouldn't. She's interested in doing business with him, seeing his potential as a regular client, especially since he's often in trouble. Tetsu didn't even pay for the apology pizza, Rina bought it to get an introduction. Then Shiro arrives with her chubby friend, nervously inviting Sueharu to her place, though she means to see her father, who's been worried about him. Respecting his decision to stay away from the acting world, her father didn't push him. Kuroha also shows up, unsure of what to say since she knows how hurt Sueharu must be. Sueharu's brain short-circuits from the trauma, and he hides behind Shiro out of fear. Shiro uses this to tell Kuroha everything is her fault and she should stay away from him to avoid causing more pain, or she'll make her pay for Sueharu's suffering. Kuroha, knowing this is partly true, leaves in tears, which snaps Sueharu back to reality. Sueharu spends the rest of the day throwing rocks by the river, waiting for Tetsu to calm the press and not blame Kuroha or her family. It gives him time to think. He tells Tetsu he doesn't hate or resent Kuroha, he wanted to do the same to Shiro, so this was just karma. He worries about the pain he caused Kuroha by rejecting her and asking for help with Shiro while pretending to be her boyfriend. He just wants to apologize and hopes she doesn't hate him. Kuroha overhears this because Tetsu had her secretly listening, but we don't know her response yet. Meanwhile, Momo wants to get serious with Sueharu, entering his house with a key she got with her smile. She's been waiting for him, preparing his favorite meals. Her mom taught her these dishes before she passed away, so she had plenty of time to practice and perfect them. Sueharu feels like he's eating his mom's cooking. Momo didn't just come for her feelings, she needed an excuse to reconnect, and the video provided that, showing him as the same person she admired. She hints she's in some trouble but doesn't give details. She explains the agency's director retired, leaving his capable son Shun in charge, who wants Sueharu to return, possibly with Kuroha. Suddenly, the colorful sisters arrive, informing Sueharu that their sister Kuroha is acting strange because of him. She seems to have lost her memory, acting normal with food instead of making weird combinations. Before diving into this, Sueharu introduces them to Momo. Midori is the sporty and sometimes violent eldest sister, Aoi is one of the twins and is sweet as an angel, and aka wears glasses, making her the smart one, stereotypically, at least. Don't expect much from them because Momo wins them over with a photo for social media, then leaves in a taxi. The sisters stay with Sueharu to discuss Kuroha's amnesia. According to Midori, her sister doesn't remember anything from when she confessed and got rejected up to the festival incident. Also, the one with glasses has a sharp tongue, recounting all the misadventures Sueharu's had recently, which should be driving him to the brink of collapse and worse. Not that she means any harm, but it comes off pretty harsh. Anyway, they pass on Kuroha's message, she wants to meet him the next day. Finally, they bid farewell, but not before telling him they'll be sad if he returns to acting, as long as he does it for himself and not to escape love or current problems. The next morning, Sueharu and Kuroha meet up. Kuroha admits she saw the video and can't understand why she did something so stupid when she loves him so much. She tries to get close to Sueharu, but he instinctively rejects her, making her realize the damage is worse than she thought. They decide to start over until Sueharu overcomes his trauma. Just then, Shiro shows up in a car, planning to take Sueharu to school to avoid the reporters, but he insists Kuroha comes along too. As expected, the two girls continue to get along terribly. Sueharu explains Kuroha's memory issue to Shiro, who doesn't believe it at all, thinking it's too convenient that she only forgot the mistakes she made. Sueharu has a plan to test this. He wants to feed Kuroha octopus-shaped sausages, which traumatized her as a child. If her sisters are telling the truth, she shouldn't have any problem eating them now. She eats them without issue, only expecting a kiss from Sueharu afterward, which allows them to get closer. They discuss the agency, with Kuroha opposing it since she doesn't want Sueharu to suffer. She'll support whatever he chooses, but Shiro, angry about what she overheard, thanks to a camera Rina planted, thinks Sueharu shouldn't join the agency. His loyal friend Tetsu points out that joining the agency will overwork Sueharu, making him leave school, and he won't have control over his roles. Tetsu wants Sueharu to enjoy his youth, so he proposes forming an entertainment club where the four of them will create content for YouTube. Tetsu might benefit from this, but he genuinely cares for his friend. Sueharu likes the idea, finding it fun, and agrees without questioning what Tetsu gains from it. Tetsu also wants to join Sueharu for the meeting with the agency's CEO, an idea Shiro supports. On the day of the meeting, Sueharu bumps into Momo and reminisces about their past. She was initially aggressive due to mistrust, but was amazed by Sueharu's acting, becoming the only person she treated well. They meet the CEO, a competent businessman but a terrible person. He manipulates and insults Kuroha, calling her a spoiled brat with poor upbringing, angering Sueharu, who pours a bottle of wine over his head, defending his friend. The CEO gets furious, calling them trash, which nearly leads to a fight with Tetsu. The meeting is interrupted by an important businessman wanting to film a commercial with Sueharu and Kuroha, who turns out to be Shiro's father. Shiro's father demands an explanation for the chaos, but with Sueharu's obvious aggression, they have little defense if the CEO calls the police. Momo proposes a clever idea, a commercial duel. One commercial made by the agency and one by Sueharu's club. If the agency's commercial is more popular, Sueharu will join them and follow the CEO's orders. But if Sueharu's group wins, the CEO must forget the incident and not harm Sueharu's reputation. This is a great opportunity, especially for Shiro's father, as he gets two commercials for the price of one by a rising star and the other by the current sensation. Since Momo will be competing against the protagonist, she wants to show Sueharu how much she's grown. She also aims to push him to his full potential as an actor to beat her. Sueharu's only concern is that there isn't a clause saying Momo will leave the agency if he wins, as he understands her trouble is closely linked to the CEO. Momo promises to add that secretly later. With that settled, it's time for the first meeting of the entertainment club, now called the Overseas Alliance, where they discuss their plan to promote isotonic drinks, basically like a Gatorade ad. Shiro is so excited that she spent all night coming up with ideas because she finally gets to fulfill her promise to have Sueharu act in something she wrote. But first, let's get to know Momo. She grew up in a problematic home, with parents always working and fighting, leaving her neglected. Her older sister, the only one who cared for her, took Momo with her after graduation to take care of her. Maria decided to become an actress to support the one person she trusted. That's where she met Sueharu, initially feeling inferior to his great talent. However, Sueharu quickly gained her trust and motivated her, even headbutting her to make her think clearly and boost her self-esteem. Questionable methods, but they worked. Momo improved her skills, but then one day, Sueharu suddenly left without a word, and she never saw him again. The light guiding her disappeared, making her lose all joy in acting, even though she's at her peak now. Jumping to the contest day, Momo's ad isn't shown, but it's described as traditional with renowned actors. The focus is on Sueharu's group's ad, with Momo and her sister reacting to it. The ad is simple, colorful, and aimed at youth, but Maria finds it lacks focus on the product, suggesting the club has misplaced priorities, hinting at an agency win. However, her sister notices something hidden in Sueharu's final smile in the ad. Momo calls the busy Sueharu, who can't chat much as he's working on a follow-up, a super emo music video with a famous band. Honestly, the message is unclear, and the drink barely appears in it, but it's accepted as valid. Everyone ends up winning. Momo realizes Sueharu is still better, meaning she can keep striving. Their club gets more votes, winning the competition and gaining significant promotion. Tetsu uses this to make deals with Shiro's father, who supports any project involving his daughter. But he also senses Tetsu's ulterior motives and investigates, discovering Tetsu befriended Sueharu for revenge against Shun, the father of the boy Sueharu hates. Mitsuru also keeps tabs, convincing his influential father to prevent Shun from doing anything foolish, as Mitsuru wants Sueharu to succeed again. In this chaotic mess, the biggest winners are Kuroha and Tetsu. Kuroha devised the plan to keep Sueharu away from agencies and convinced Tetsu to help. She realized Tetsu approached Sueharu to use him against an industry enemy, though he didn't reveal Shun was his father. Kuroha pretended to have amnesia to mend things with Sueharu slowly and to provoke the CEO into insulting them, knowing Sueharu would react and further distance himself from the industry. Despite everything, everyone gained something, even Momo. She transferred to Sueharu's school to be closer to him, using the love crisis as an excuse to leave the agency she disliked and reclaim part of her missed school life. Sueharu, overwhelmed, hides with Rina, who questions his friendship with Tetsu. Sueharu knows Tetsu's true nature but values their friendship, as Tetsu's plans also benefit them both. Oh, and finally, we see Kuroha slip up while talking to the protagonist, accidentally revealing memories she wasn't supposed to have. Our protagonist confronts her, demanding an explanation. Kuroha refuses to explain, saying the reason is so obvious he should figure it out himself. This leads to an argument where the protagonist ends up saying she has a black soul, referencing her name. This pisses her off because she's never liked jokes about her name. So, she slaps him and storms off, leaving Sueharu regretting what he said. Not because he feels guilty, but because he fears what she might do in revenge. But there's no time to dwell on that since he needs to figure out why she pretended. The good voice in his head tells him the obvious: she pretended to fix their relationship because she loves him. The bad voice suggests it's a strategy to reject him again and plunge him into a pit of misery from which he'll never escape. Maybe that's a bit exaggerated, but Kuroha does want to fix everything and knows they'll fight again if they're alone, so she needs a mediator, likely one of her sisters. Meanwhile, Shiro realizes she's achieved her dream but is losing in love because Sueharu and Kuroha's relationship is mending. So, she decides to ask Tetsu for help. Tetsu isn't on either girl's side, he just supports whatever seems fun or beneficial, so he agrees to play along with her idea. Now, on to the club. The hierarchy is shown. First are the officials who have the right to propose and choose projects through a secret vote. If they want to veto a project, they must do so under their name, but only once a month. Then, there are associate members who can participate in projects without making any decisions. Currently, only Rina is an associate member. Tetsu's idea is to shoot a promotional video for the club with the 3 official members, involving swimsuits, of course. The idea is to grab attention so people don't focus on their dancing and singing skills. However, this idea needs to be modified because the girls don't like it at all. Still, the idea is approved by vote, without the swimsuits. Despite this, there are still problems. Kuroa can't leave her sisters alone for the weekend since their parents are traveling. The solution is for her to bring them, but they can't join until Sunday. Plus, the protagonist has to study during the trip because of his bad grades, and Momo too, because she got into the school without an admission exam thanks to money and her influence as an actress. The twist comes with the stay location. Shiro's father is lending them a beach house, suggesting everything was planned by Tetsu from the start. The only one who refuses to believe this is Sueharu, leading to another argument with Kuroa, increasing their mistrust. This needs resolving, and Aoi, one of Kuroa's sisters, steps in. She uses cleaning as an excuse to talk to Sueharu, who's glad for the company but feels guilty for finding Aoi easier to deal with than Kuroa. She tells him to drop the marital fight nonsense, admit their feelings, and start dating. Finally, someone says what we're all thinking. Aoi also advises him to be sure about his choice of partner to avoid ending up like Tetsu and to be cautious during the trip since the other 2 girls might try something while he's fighting with Kuroa. Tetsu, revealed to be Rina's half-brother, enjoys the chaos, thinking if Sueharu gets a girlfriend, the club will slowly dissolve. Sueharu's in a tough spot with Eri, Momo's sister, ensuring he doesn't hurt Momo. Shiro's plan to win Sueharu over with her cooking backfires as Momo turns out to be a fantastic cook, turning their meal into a reality show final. Shiro, realizing she can't compete with Momo's skills, feels like a rich kid who only knows how to make fried chicken. Rina, meanwhile, films everything but feels out of place until Momo befriends her. Later, Tetsu tells Sueharu he could just form a harem to make everyone happy, which makes Sueharu fear Tetsu will end up heartbroken one day. Still, part of Sueharu sees some logic in Tetsu's absurdity. Momo and Rina overhear this, explaining how Sueharu's serious nature clashes with Tetsu's honesty about his desires. Momo's happy, as it means Sueharu hasn't chosen anyone yet, leaving the harem possibility open. Knowing that the other 2 failed in their plans, it's now time for her to take advantage since she's currently the one losing because Sueharu doesn't take her seriously at all. Upon arriving at Shiro's house, the humiliation begins for the less fortunate as they take a tour of the place, assign rooms, and whatnot. They also take some time to sunbathe, during which Tetsu pushes the protagonist into the water from a balcony for being too flirty. Meanwhile, Kuroa is at home practicing the choreography for the recording but gets worried when Akane reminds her that Sueharu must be drooling over the other girls. And indeed, that's precisely what's happening, especially since Tetsu told Rina to stop recording and enjoy herself since swimsuits are banned in the video. The protagonist gets mesmerized and ends up being tackled by Tetsu to learn not to ogle his friend's sisters, though no one knows they're siblings. Then we see Sueharu studying while the girls practice the choreography. Momo does a great job, but the writer struggles as her movements are quite stiff and awkward. Sueharu isn't just criticizing her, he knows what he's talking about and even does the choreography himself to show her. This makes Rina a bit envious of how naturally he moves, but for Shiro, it's a blow because even a guy can look cuter than her. Sueharu tells her she's not doing badly, it's just a matter of attitude. She should think of someone she'd like to make happy by watching her dance to motivate and express herself through her movements. As dinner and the duel time approach, Momo starts preparing while Shiro heads to the beach to sulk since she only practiced the protagonist's favorite dish and has no idea how to make a stew, knowing she'll lose. The protagonist finds her to tell her she doesn't have to pretend to be perfect since he knows her weaknesses from when they were kids. But that's the problem, she tried to improve as much as possible to measure up to him. Sueharu doesn't care about virtues and flaws, he thinks obsessing over them is harmful, and he's right. He finishes by telling her she should just act naturally and be happy. Plus, she can cook his favorite dish if she wants because he doesn't want her hours of practice to go to waste. This creates a romantic moment, setting the perfect scene for a kiss, but always words echo in Sueharu's mind, and he instinctively pulls back. So, you could say he held out well until the arrival of the Color Sisters who wake him up the next day. Kuroa arrives with destruction in mind, at least for a few seconds, expecting the protagonist to apologize as soon as she arrives. Apparently, this will cost him because, after the rehearsals, she realizes there's some closeness between Shiro and Sueharu, meaning something happened between them, and she needs to execute her plan. Back to the beach, but I'll focus on the moment Kuroa is alone with the protagonist. She warns him that she's tired of him being mad, and since he hasn't figured out why she hid the truth, she'll make him forgive her by being more active than usual, constantly reminding him that she likes him until he can't stop thinking about her. And that's exactly what happens. The protagonist tries to fight his thoughts but ends up looking ridiculous. Later, they study with some quizzes Kuroa created herself, which Sueharu notices contain exercises similar to those he struggles with. This makes him realize all the effort Kuroa has put into this trip, not just now, but since it's thanks to her that someone like him could get into such a prestigious school. We also see another scene with Akane, focusing on something good this time, her music knowledge. She wants to help because she used to be in the music club but left since the others didn't want to progress by practicing. She faced a lot of rejection and is now afraid to suggest anything about the speakers. However, the protagonist convinces her not to be afraid to share her ideas, as they're good ones, and even Tetsu likes them. There's also the issue of Shiro, whose foot is quite sore from the rehearsals. Despite this, she practices alone at night, and Sueharu hears her talking to her friend on the phone. Shiro says she understands she shouldn't pretend to be perfect, but that doesn't mean she shouldn't strive to improve. She's content to stay behind the protagonist, giving him a little push when necessary. As she dances, the protagonist realizes her feelings are the same as his own. Even though his first love was surpassed by a new one, the lingering venom still hurts him inside. The worst part is he's not the only one suffering this way. Aike has started feeling something in her chest every time she sees the protagonist, scaring her twin sister because, like Midori, she's also in love with him. Both have decided to give up for Kuroa's sake, knowing the pain of letting go of a first love. That's why she doesn't want Akane to suffer the same fate. The moment is quite dramatic and emotional, but honestly, it seems unnecessary for all the female characters in the series to be in love with the protagonist. The next day, Sueharu is in simp mode with Shiro as if no one else exists, even after the recording, only thinking about how well she danced and sang. He becomes so obsessed with her that he wants to finish the recording in one take to avoid her hurting her foot, leading to an argument between him and Tetsu. Shiro tries to stop them but falls off the stage. The protagonist tries to save her but unfortunately ends up severely injuring his arm. The arc ends again with the blonde guy and Tetsu analyzing who gained more points this time. Obviously, Momo lost since she had zero relevance, and Shiro won, especially because of what only we saw that night, making things more tense from now on. Because the protagonist's injury was Shiro's fault, both of their parents agreed that Shiro would live with him until he recovers, taking care of him with the help of his servant. This obviously worries Kuroa a lot. In the end, they decided that Shiro would stay at the protagonist's house, even though the other two didn't want to leave them alone and planned to stay as well. But Kuroa doesn't want to leave Sueharu alone for even a second, so she asks her sisters to bring him what he needs. This scene just shows how the three girls get nervous around him and want to step back to clear their minds. Otherwise, it doesn't serve much purpose because Kuroa has to go home by her parents' order. The same goes for Momo, who throws a fit until she leaves in the taxi because her sister won't let her stay. The blonde still doesn't trust Shiro, who decides to talk to her seriously in private. So, Sueharu waits for her at home with Cheyenne, the mischievous servant. She's tired of not intervening in this situation because she thinks the protagonist is a vulgar womanizer but says that, in a way, all the girls are playing with him. That's why she looks at him with a superior air, thinking she's a genius. The first thing she tells him is that he's being a fool for thinking Shiro likes him, as she only feels admiration for him, nothing more. We know that's not true, but since this is the dumbest type of protagonist, his insecurities make him believe everything he's told. We also see that Kuroha is quite sad because Shiro just wanted to mock her by living with him for a long time. So, the blonde plans to execute a plan to secure her victory. Then, we move to the next day, which is Momo's first official day of school. Her high school fans put on a welcome scene, where we see that Cheyenne also studies here. The protagonist's daily life gets a bit complicated because Momo is very attached to him, drawing the envious eyes of those who want to hurt him. Shiro takes care of this, using the opportunity to feed the protagonist and gain an advantage. But Sueharu remembers what Cheyenne told him and prefers to go out for some fresh air. Kuroha follows him to the rooftop, and they start talking. The blonde brings up the fact that she likes him all the time, which the protagonist thought was just a game. Thinking this makes Kuroha sad, but they don't argue this time because Setsu sends a message to meet at the club for some important news. It turns out a TV channel contacted Shiro's father with the intention of making a documentary about the time the protagonist was out of the entertainment world. This is a big problem because it was a tough period for Sueharu, so Kuroha is completely against them making easy money off others' tragedies. However, there's another issue. Even if they don't say anything, the press will start digging and end up finding the information they want to hide, which could be covered with lies and lead journalists to manipulate his past. This risk is also present in the documentary since they can edit it as they please to create whatever story they want. That's why Tetsu has already come up with a plan to avoid this. He believes Sueharu himself should tell the whole truth, which will eventually come to light. They plan to release their own documentary, which might reduce the quality a bit but will have the correct story. They need to start with the series that led to his retirement. The first season was called Chill Star, which catapulted into fame, and then came Chill King, where the tragedy happened. According to the manga, the protagonist was poor but happy with his mother until she passed away. Her death was not an accident, so he decided to take revenge by becoming the king of the city. At the end of that story, the protagonist pays for all the bad things he did, but that happened 6 years later, so another actor played that scene. However, now the ages of the protagonist and his character match, so it's time to finish what he started, meaning filming the real ending of the story. This will be their bargaining chip with the TV channel. Sueharu will agree to film the scene in exchange for letting them film the documentary themselves. We then jump to a meeting between the three rivals for the title of Sueharu's girlfriend because Kuroha thinks they're all drawing too much attention around him. They conclude to level the playing field by setting some limits. Kuroha will stop saying she likes him all the time, Momo will avoid doing things that cause scenes with her fans, and Shiro will allow them all to take turns caring for Sueharu as long as Cheyenne is supervising. But that's not all because Momo mentions something about the documentary, and although they don't tell us her idea, we see the reactions of the three. Both Kuroha and Shiro think a huge opportunity has appeared, but Momo is happy because they both fell for the bait, and she has all the advantage. New problems start to arise. One doesn't matter much because it's just about Sean writing things on the protagonist's cast, but the real problem comes with Tetsu, who sends some photos to the protagonist of the cover of an article supposedly telling the truth about his retirement. Obviously, the responsible one is Sean since his agency is the only one aware of the situation. He could spill everything with complete specifics. With this, their plan is about to fall apart mainly because they can't respond to Sean directly, which is what he's looking for to create controversy. Luckily, there's still hope to take advantage of this as Tetsu received another offer when he proposed to recreate the ending to the TV channel. Here comes the country's biggest company, a streaming service collaborating with TV channels to compete with foreign companies. In short, it's a made-up Netflix in this anime. They are looking to revive old series, so the ending of this series would be great publicity. Because of this, they'll be willing to help with the documentary since it's in their best interest for Sueharu to have a good image. Now, Momo's idea for the documentary is revealed. It basically involves the three girls interviewing him about the different stages of his life in which each of them was present. First up is Shiro, who talks a bit about how differently he was treated at school because he was a star. He was happy to meet Shiro because she treated him like an equal. She recalls a time when they both wanted to go to Tokyo Tower. The problem was that she was very introverted and scared to leave her home, but thanks to the protagonist's words, she realized she had to strive to achieve her goals, just like her hero, who also had his own problems and made mistakes. This helped her leave the house, much to the joy of her servants, who were thrilled to see this achievement, even though they should have been worried about being fired since they were supposed to be looking after her. Anyway, they couldn't get further than the train station back then, so they went to Tokyo Tower this time, but we don't get to see that. What we do see is the change in Shiro's attitude, as she becomes so happy that it worries her servant. However, her threatening expression changes when she sees a photo of the writer. Sueharu seizes this opportunity by offering her more photos in exchange for her starting to treat him better. She tries to trick him into giving her the photos, but ends up losing because the protagonist only gave her half of them. Meanwhile, Shiro is on the computer fantasizing about her first date, so the next morning she tries to wake him with a kiss but is interrupted by Momo. She's there because she wants to take him to a surprise location for his interview. On the way, she reflects on how much Sueharu meant to her in the past. This was mentioned before, but now we get more details about the promise she made to reach him. We also see her change in attitude toward all the other studio workers. Lastly, we see the scene where she asked him about his favorite dishes. When he couldn't answer, his mom appeared to tell her and promised to teach her how to make them just the way Sueharu likes. The reason she planned all this in the documentary is because it clearly gives her an advantage, since the hardest chapter of his life was his mother's death, and she was the one who was with him during that time. Momo knows she has to help him heal that wound, and to do that, she must face her fears, guiding him to the street where the incident happened. He proceeds to narrate in detail everything that happened that day. Obviously, the car didn't hit her, but she wanted to make the fall look realistic by hitting herself for real. Unfortunately, she hit her head in a bad spot. The production was going to be cancelled, but Sueharu begged them not to because he couldn't stand the idea of the role she longed for being shelved forever. He watched the series when it aired, but enduring such punishment and the rest of the filming was too much, leading him to fear acting. Remembering all this is painful for the protagonist, but also for Momo, who finally understands what he felt back then. That's why she starts crying, because all these years, she's been repressing her feelings, trying to pretend she didn't feel guilty for the things she said when he quit acting. Even though she didn't know anything, she noticed his attitude had changed but couldn't realize what he needed at that moment, which frustrated her so much. Lastly, she tells him that she also loved his mom a lot, which made her suffer greatly when she found out about her death suddenly. These words make Sueharu break down, releasing everything he had kept inside as tears. After this emotional moment, they return home where Momo tries to get a kiss from the protagonist, but Cheyenne appears to restore order and tries to keep them at least 10 meters apart all the time. They think that's too much, so they start talking about the protagonist's photo albums, which have several pictures of a young Shiro buying off the servant for now. Returning to the main topic, the text informs that the company has been controlling everything said about the protagonist in other media to avoid problems. However, another dilemma arises. The two actresses from the series don't want to return, so they want to use Kuroa and Shiro to act despite being beginners, taking advantage of the documentary. But let's not forget it's Kuroa's turn for her interview, which in my opinion, is the most important because she has witnessed all his life's progress. On the way to the interview location, the blonde begins her internal monologue, talking about how much she loves Sueharu. She doesn't even know when it happened, but before she knew it, she already wanted him present at every step she took. She saw how this ordinary boy gradually fell into an abyss. His star status made everyone isolate him for fear of getting into trouble. This caused none of his former friends to be by his side after the accident, and he was criticized for quitting his career. His father buried himself in work to mourn his wife's death, leaving Sueharu only able to find happiness in the moments spent with Kuroa and her sisters. Kuroa knows all his facets because she was always there, always by his side. But this changed when her mother started working and tasked her with looking after her sisters. Now that they saw each other less, she valued even more the moments spent with him, especially one that was quite special, which happened in a small cave they used as a hideout, where they just arrived. There, they started talking about their problems. Sueharu confessed that he didn't go home much because it was too painful to return to his own after so much joy, yet he appreciated that she was always by his side, making them both cry a lot, which became Kuroa's favorite memory. After that, we see them alone after school, when Kuroa finally musters the courage to confess again. She clarifies the stupidity of having rejected him and waits for Sueharu's response. But even though he's in love with her, he can't deny that the other two also hold a place in his heart. He's unsure if he should accept because he doesn't know if it's right to be her boyfriend if his heart isn't 100% hers. This doubt made him run out of time, but Kuroa expected this because she knows deep down he hasn't fully forgotten his first love. That's why she decides to remain in an intermediate position. She's not willing to give up because she's aware Sueharu likes her. That's why she proposes strengthening their relationship little by little until he's ready to give an answer. She doesn't plan to pressure him, and the relationship can end at any moment if either of them decides, meaning they'll be almost secretly dating. We then skip ahead in time. Sueharu recovered from his arm injury and was able to act, leading to the typical end of arc scene. Mitsuru meets with Tetsu to discuss who won. This time, Tetsu wins because he managed to discover his father's plans in time and stop him, scoring a victory. Among the girls, Kuroa gained the most by making a truce and causing Shiro to lose all the advantage she had from the beach. Moreover, with the confession without a response, she made both of them aware of each other's feelings, giving her a clear advantage by providing Sueharu with a safe path. Tetsu knows this because she herself told him, knowing that with time, he would figure it out or the protagonist might tell him. Although, of course, this is under threat, so it's convenient for her to tell the blonde to use him as a scapegoat if he accidentally slips up. Even so, things aren't settled because Sueharu now has a fan club, meaning more girls will try to get close to him, so these three must never let their guard down.